in order to validate, support the hypotheses that I had developed, I tried to marshal a whole bunch of different kinds of evidence, again, to work synergistically together in that. So first of all, there's a lot of quantitative evidence in that, and the kinds of things referred to just a bit ago. So evidence on the roll call voting behavior of members and how they had been transformed. That to take a more general example related to Southern Democrats, in 1969-70, the first Congress of the Nixon administration, the average Southern Democrat voted more often with the Republican Party than the Democratic Party. That's about as vivid an illustration of a party deeply divided on policy that you could possibly have. And then I traced the roll call behavior of members from that point to later, to the initially the early 1980s and the later 1980s, and in my current work right up to the minute, that we could observe one more frequent occurrence of roll calls on which the two parties split away from each other. So more party conflict, party-based conflict in the chamber. And then in terms of the behavior of individual members, the Southern Democrats as a group becoming more and more and more loyal to the Democratic Party, voting less and less often with the Republicans, to the point that by the mid-1980s, the average Southern Democrat was only a few percentage points less loyal to the Democratic Party than the average Northern Democrat. So that's in terms of the kind of quantitative evidence in that. Then in terms of qualitative evidence, I both drew a lot on the journalistic record. I am an inveterate clipper of stories from newspapers and things like that. We do it electronically now, but physically clipping things to use as examples and more collectively as a sense of what was going on in the real nitty-gritty of policymaking. And then I also did interviews with members of the House. I interviewed 25 Southern Democrats, for example, for my book on partisan leaders in the post-reform House. And so I was able to ask them directly about the kinds of questions we were interested in, and they could answer anonymously and therefore be forthright about their views. And then later on, other work I did when I moved over to the Senate, I worked on a project studying the Senate, and we interviewed 50 members of the U.S. Senate, and on tape, my co-authors and I. And so I was being trained by Dick Fenno. I developed an appreciation very early in my career for the possible ways that interviews of elites could play a substantial role in both developing our understanding of what was going on and in providing evidence for the hypotheses we developed.